I'm Rosalind from the Rose House Wedding and Event Space in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. In our gift shop, we have Iron Orchid design transfers, and today I'm going to show you how they work. So, I have this cabinet door that started out looking like this. This is the back, and I will clean this up a little bit, but I did clean up the front, and then I used a gel stain and re-brushed up the edges. I kept the knob because I think it's kind of a cool feature when it's a wall hanging to be able to hook something to this if you want to. You could put dried flowers from it or anything else that's just fun to hang. And it also helps you see that this actually is a cabinet door, and sometimes finding that little hidden secret in a wall hanging is just a cool discovery. The center of this, I used Annie Sloan Arliss chalk paint. And anytime you're using a transfer, you're going to want a really matte paint. So this is where the transfer is going to be, which is why I used this matte paint. We are at the point where the cabinet door is clean, it's painted, and it's ready for the transfer. So first, I'm going to measure the center of my cabinet. I like to use sticky paper, memo notes, to mark things because they don't leave any permanent stick. That's what this is. I'm measuring out just the halfway point. It's a 9-inch square, so here's 4.5. So I put this at 4.5, 4.5, and this side is 13.5. So I'm going to put this at 6 3/4. So I've got it kind of measured out just for placing so that I set my fern in the center. So this is going to be the image that I'm transferring onto this cabinet door, which is going to just be a wall hanging. So I'm going to want my center to be about there. And my center is here, so this is just going to be over a little bit. So that's roughly where I want to put it. It's not at all ready to be placed. I'm also going to give it this little sciencey writing, which I'm going to transfer as well. I'm just going to have that right about there. And I think I'm going to move my transfer up and not have it completely centered. What I love about the Iron Orchid transfers is that they come on a grid. So it's a lot easier to measure and look at it for its placement. So I think I'm happy with where this is going. All right, so I've kind of measured out my space. I've placed my transfer where I want it for the visual look I'm going for. I am not a perfectionist. When I do these things, I'm doing them. I'm okay with it being a little off. That's just part of my style. I'm a little off. It's okay if this is a little off. If you want it better, you can take your time. You could do string here and kind of make your grid on your board. This is just an easy way to do this, and I'm okay with it being done kind of loosely. And one thing that I did beforehand is I taped this in place just so I didn't have it fall off of my paper, because it's important it stays on the paper before you transfer it. So the transfers come on a giant sheet, and it comes with much more than this fern. So I cut this transfer apart, and I'm just using one section, which is why I have it all taped up. I didn't want it to come off when I wasn't using it. I kind of put it back where I had planned. So I'm just gonna gently place the whole thing. All right, now that it's all placed, we're going to actually transfer it. And the way you do that, these come with a little piece here. If you lose this, you could use a popsicle stick. That'd probably be the best way. Sometimes I've used the side of my scissors to rub. And basically you just rub over the plastic until you see that the print is a much lighter color. I made a mistake here of not cutting enough plastic out around my letters. It's a little harder to rub because I'm not giving myself a lot of room. And one thing that's important is to give yourself a lot of space. So now if you look up close, you can see it looks really cloudy, which means it's ready to come off of the plastic. So then I just grab an edge and peel it very slowly. And it's placed. I think I rubbed a little too hard for this wood of this cabinet, but I'm okay with it. Now I'm going to move on to the fern. I just started in the middle, but really you can start anywhere. You can do whatever strategy works for you, as long as you rub every section. Now, because I learned in my prints down there that I rubbed too hard in a couple sections, I'm trying to keep an even strength as I rub this, and I'm trying to rub it very flatly so that it does not leave any indents. I'm trying to rub very evenly among this whole edge just so that I don't leave any marks like I accidentally did down here. And now this is an old cabinet door. It's very rustic, very shabby chic. So I am okay with my image looking that way because that's just part of the art. It's good to rub with the grain of the wood because it's just a little easier. But you should definitely go both directions. It's in place enough that I'm going to feel it out. So I'm going to grab this end and just pull gently and see. And I can see some of this is still staying on here. So as I pull it, I will continue to rub it. So as I'm pulling, if I see some of it go up, I can just go back over it. Especially the fine ends of the fern. This is an arm workout, and it's a process, so expect to take your time, because really that's the key, is taking it slow. You can definitely see where it's really rubbed into place and where it's not. Stretching out my fingers. Take breaks. This isn't worth hurting yourself. Another most important thing is that your paint has to be completely cured. Make sure your paint sets for at least 24 hours before you apply the transfer. Now again, to keep track of where I went, folding it, flattening it back out, and I'm turning it again. And those edges and the thin tips of those leaves, that's the most important part to keep in place. If you're like me, you can find this relaxing. Just turn on your favorite TV show, your favorite podcast, and just rub away while you're doing that. It's as relaxing as coloring, really. All right, I've got it all off. I gave myself a challenge. A lot of people would have sanded this cabinet door pretty smooth before applying the paint. I didn't do that. I liked all the creases and bends that were in the wood. This cabinet door was in my friend's shed. It was in there for a long time. It got weathered, it got wet. It's got the dents to show it. All right, so there is my piece. And if you turn sideways, you look in the light, you can see that it's all in place. Oh man. I have a cat, and sometimes his hair gets where it shouldn't. All right. So this kind of gives you the idea of the wall hanging I'm going for. We're not quite done, but we're getting there. Like I said, this is a rustic piece, so I'm not saying that I'm about to ruin this at all, but I am going to give it a little extra character by sanding it just a tad. Like a tad. And it just goes with the story of the piece. I wouldn't do this with all of the things I do. A nice dresser, I would have definitely sanded it several times beforehand. I would have put a final coat on. But this is just a fun wall hanging where I'm just being creative and sharing with you the process. Okay, so I have attached a transfer. I gave it some extra character by sanding it, making some areas of it look a little more weathered. I'm still going in with that rustic look, and there's only really one thing left. I'm going to add a protective coat. So I am using I Love Hue Mystic Shell protective coats. They come in flat, gloss, semi-gloss, satin. I almost always gravitate towards satin. I just don't need things too shiny. So that's going to be the final step, is to apply this coat. In order to do that, I'm going to wipe down my sanding, make sure my piece is really in place. And one of the great things about the transfers is once they're in place, they are in place. It's not going to leave. It's not going to move. Just wiping it down with some water, getting some of the sand from the sanding off. I don't really feel that I need to touch anything up, but if this was a different style, I maybe would want to get my paint out and brush up a little bit of it. But overall, I think I like it. I have a vision for where it's going to hang, where I know it's just going to look perfect. So that's that. So the only thing left is the coat. It's going to shake it up and apply it over the top once I get it open. What I love about the transfers is it's not paint. It's not wet, it's a sticker, and it's in place and it's good to go. We don't have to wait for it to cure or anything. So here's the protective coat. It's like conditioner. It just seals it all up. I've applied the Mystic Shell. It's a little streaky. I'm okay with that look, like I said. A person who likes to do prep work would have taped the edges of this so that it didn't get onto the wood. But that's not me. I tend to do the prep work after. So I've got my washcloth and I'm just going to wipe down, make sure none of my coating is on the edge. I'm going to let it dry. And then I'll apply a backing, and the next thing you'll see is a picture of it hanging on the wall. So there it is. There's my fern, and it's pretty much done. Just gotta let it dry. Ask me questions. I'm happy to help you. I'm your stockist in central Wisconsin at the Rose House Wedding and Event Space. You'll find this piece and others in my gift shop. I'd love for you to check us out. Here's my cat with his hair that gets on my stuff. And there it is, our finished transfer. Thanks for watching.